Hello, sixth graders. I'm just going to walk you through the first part of the Color Magic Measurement Lab. Now, if you were in class on Thursday, we did the bulk of this lab, but I want to walk you through it again for distance learners or hybrid learners or students that were in class and didn't quite understand some of the measurement procedures that we went through. Okay, so I start out, I've got my 6 test tubes here labeled A through F right over here. And I'm starting out with 25 milliliters of water in the red A test tube. I've got 17 milliliters right here of yellow in the C, and then I have measured out 21 milliliters of blue liquid for test tube E. I used a 25 milliliter graduated cylinder. Remember, the first thing we always have to do is to figure out how it's calibrated. Okay, so I looked at this graduated cylinder and noticed that each of the little lines counts 0.5 of a mil. And so I knew exactly where to fill it to be as precise as possible. That is one of the objectives of the lab, was to be able to make precise measurements and also to read directions. All right, so we are now on number 4. Okay, so from test tube C, we're going to measure 4 milliliters and pour it into test tube D. I have a smaller graduated cylinder here that only goes up to 10 milliliters. Always use the smallest possible graduated cylinder for the most accurate measurement. I also have a pipette here. A pipette helps with really small measurements, because if I were to pour the test tube into this small little graduated cylinder, it would fill up awfully fast. So I'm going to use a pipette and measure out 4 milliliters of yellow water. Okay. Okay, I have 4 milliliters, and I'm going to pour that from test tube C. I'm going to add it to test tube D. Okay, so I've got yellow in test tube D. Instruction number 5 says from test tube E, measure out 7 milliliters. I'm going to try pouring it this time and see how that goes. Here, I'll move this out of the way so you can watch me do this. 7 mils. Oh, see, I spilt all over the place. Works a little bit better with the pipette, but I'm just not going to be patient enough to do that. Okay, there's 7 milliliters, and I am going to pour that from test tube E into test tube D. Okay, so I've got yellow here, I've got blue here. What's it going to make? You guys have all been to art class. You know that's going to be a pretty green color. Oh, look at that. Isn't that beautiful? All right, number 6, from test tube E. Okay, so we're taking the blue. We're going to measure out 4 mils and put it into test tube F. Okay, so I will pour 4 mils of blue very carefully this time so I don't spill. It's hard to see in this light. Got to make sure I know exactly where my 4 milliliter mark is. And that was way too much, so I'll pour some back. That's where that pipette comes in handy. I'm going to use it for that last milliliter. Okay, now I have exactly 4. And I'm going to pour that into test tube F. Blue. Okay. Instruction number 7, from test tube A, measure out 7 mils. 7 mils is right there. Use the pipette for the last part. Here we go. 7 mils, and we are going to put that into test tube F. Okay, so now we've got red and blue. What's that going to make? Pretty flyer purple. Okay, one last mixture From test tube A, we're going to measure out 8 milliliters and put it into B. So over here again, 8 milliliters of red. And we're going to put that into test tube B, right here. And then the last one is 3 milliliters from C, and we're going to put that into B. And I bet you can guess what color that is going to make. Ooh, I got 3 exactly that time. That into B, and red and yellow make orange. Okay, so now I have this pretty rainbow of test tubes here. I don't know if you can see it very well with those little holders there. Maybe that's better. Okay. It says in the data table, record the color of the liquid in each test tube. Okay, so we are going to write down what color is in test tube A. Well, I can look at this and I would write down red right here. What color is in B? Orange. What color is in C? Yellow. We've got green in D. We've got blue in E and purple in F. And then this part right here, amount of liquid in milliliters, be precise. We are going to measure out each of these. Okay, so how much red is in test tube A? We pour it back into the graduated cylinder. And I would look at that. Always good to put it down on a level surface. And I got a measurement, and yours might be slightly different. That's totally fine. We're just, the point is to make accurate measurements, even if our measurements differ as far as amounts go, that we're reading the graduated cylinder as accurately as we can. And for this measurement, I have 5.5 milliliters. So I would write 5.5 there. Pour that back into your test tube, or you can discard it, that's fine. For test tube B, pour that into the graduated cylinder. I have 10, 11, 12 milliliters of orange. I would write that right next to where I wrote orange, 12 milliliters right here, and so on. Just measure each test tube, and then you are going to get a total. You can total up these numbers just by adding them, or if you'd like and you have a big enough graduated cylinder, you can pour all of them into a graduated cylinder, see what the measurement is, and then see if that measurement is different from your calculations here. Okay? Once you have that done, we go to this the analysis part. Okay, so right here it says in the picture on the right, draw the approximate liquid levels and the colors, and color in the colors that you created. All right, if you've got your test tubes in front of you, that will be pretty easy. You can just kind of draw the lines of where red is and where orange is and where yellow is and where green is and color those in. If you don't have your test tube, maybe you haven't got to this part and we finished the lab on Thursday and you're coming back into class on Monday, that's totally fine because you already have these measurements here, right? You know which one is the least. You know that test tube A, as far as my results go, was the least amount. And so you can kind of make some estimations where you're drawing, where you're coloring in your test tubes here. All right. These questions here are dealing with the amounts that are listed right here. Okay, so those are fairly straightforward. What is the meniscus of a liquid and how does a scientist use the meniscus? Remember the activity we did last week. It talks about what the meniscus is. You can also use Google if you need some help with that definition. And these are just a little bit of thought questions that go with your lab. I hope you had fun with this. Again, if you're a distance learner, I don't imagine that you have a test tube holder and test tubes at home. Graduated cylinders are available at school sitting in the office waiting for you to pick them up. you can just use some glasses. That works just fine as well. Remember, it doesn't matter what kind of container this is in. What matters is that you're making accurate measurements with this. Okay, that's the whole point of the lab. I will talk to you soon.